Hey, church family, I'm so glad you've chosen to join us for today's daily devotional, our last daily devotional of the week. All week we've been talking about shaking off fear, and we've also talked about love a good bit in that conversation. We really looked at a passage that talks a good bit about love in 1 John chapter 4. And today we're going to talk a bit about how that love and that fear, how they kind of work together, or really how love works against fear. And so our verse for today is 1 John chapter 4 in verse 18. It says, "There's no fear in love. Instead, perfect love drives out fear, because fear involves punishment. So the one who fears is not complete in love." Where at the beginning there, where he says, "Whereas those who have sinned," right? That's all of us, right? Those of us who have sinned. That's every person on the earth. We have a reason to fear because our sin requires punishment. And so our fear is of a coming judgment. Our fear is of punishment. But he says the love of God drives fear away, right? That love of God can remove the fear that we may have. And we know what John's talking about here. What he's talking about is that if we surrender our lives to Christ, we accept the free gift of love that he offers us. When we do that, we have no reason to fear. If we're truly believers and we live our lives representative of that, we are loving the world the way Christ has called us to love the world, we are truly committed in faith to him, then we don't have to fear of judgment. We don't have to fear of the end of time because we know that at the end of time will be eternity for us as we are united with our Father and live in perfect union with him. Now, does that mean that we have no fear because we're perfect? Absolutely not. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No one is perfect. And as we live here on this earth, we never will be. But Christ doesn't require perfection. Christ requires submission. Christ requires that we love him and live with that love. And even though we may sin, we know that sin is covered. Again, this is not a sin. It's not when we look and we say, well, because my sin's covered, I'll sin all the more. I think Paul has something to say about that. No, instead, we should strive to be perfect. We should strive to be like Christ, knowing that we probably won't be, or that we really can't be, that he was the only one who could ever be perfect. But as we strive for that, we are proving out that love that we have for God, and God has love for us. And we can have confidence on the day of judgment when we stand before our Father, knowing that he loves us and that the sacrifice of his Son has covered our sins. So our author gives us a couple of questions for us to look at. The first one says, how does your life show that you love God? Are there things in your life that specifically work out your faith, prove out your faith to others? And then secondly, why does this mean that you have no reason to live fearfully? And I think when he says why, I think he's talking about this verse specifically. Why, if you're a believer, do you not have to live in fear because of love? Church family, I hope you'll work through those questions as we are getting ready for the Christmas season and we get closer and closer. Sometimes we can get distracted with trying to buy those last minute gifts or make last minute family plans. And then in the middle of COVID, that becomes so much more complicated. But church family, my hope is that you will remember this love that God has poured out for you as we get closer and closer to Christmas. And knowing that as we celebrate Christmas, we're celebrating a representation of a day when all that God put in place for us to be united with him in a right relationship began. Church family, as you are thinking on that and celebrating with your family next week, I want you to know that we love you and we're praying for you.